Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I've been camping in the Rockies for years, long enough to know the forest has its moods, quiet days, roaring winds, sudden storms. But nothing in all my years prepared me for what happened that night. I had chosen a remote clearing, away from trails, away from people. The kind of place where silence presses on your ears, and the only movement is the sway of pines. I wanted solitude, nothing more than me, my tent, and the forest breathing around me. The sun had just dipped behind the jagged peaks when I finished setting up. The air was cool, the scent of pine sharp and sweet. I could hear the soft rustle of leaves as the wind curled through the branches. Night was settling in slowly, a creeping dark that felt almost alive. And that's when I first heard it, a faint, deliberate creak like floorboards groaning under weight. At first, I blamed it on an old tree swaying or a branch scraping another, but the sound didn't match the rhythm of the wind. It was too deliberate, too human. My gut tightened, but I shrugged it off. This forest had tricks. Animals made sounds you couldn't identify. Birds, raccoons, deer, they all had ways of whispering you awake. Then I saw it. 50 feet from my tent, a cabin had appeared. I swear it wasn't there an hour ago. No trail led to it. No markings suggested a ranger or camper had been anywhere near. Its logs were dark and slick with moisture, the roof low and slanted. The windows were black holes, and the faint light of dusk didn't reflect on the glass. But I felt it, the presence. Something waiting inside, silent but aware. Curiosity pushed me forward. Foolish, maybe, but I couldn't stop myself. Every step closer made the hairs on my neck prickle. The door was cracked, just a sliver of darkness, but I could feel the air shift as I approached. Cold seeped from the opening, colder than the mountain air outside. Damp and rotten smelling. I peeked in. The cabin was small, almost cramped, and smelled of wet wood and decay. Shadows clung to corners, moving just out of the range of vision. I thought I saw shapes, figures pacing in sync, but no one stepped into the light. The air felt thick, heavy like it weighed down my lungs. And then I saw the mirror. It was cracked, old, the kind of thing that catches more than just your reflection. My reflection was there. At least, it looked like me. But it wasn't me. It smiled, slowly, wide, teeth sharp and too bright in the gloom. And worse, it moved before I moved. My fingers hadn't twitched, but it lifted its hand. My eyes hadn't turned, but it tilted its head. Frozen, I felt a laugh bubble up inside me. Not my laugh, though. I could hear it, high and thin, echoing in my ears as if the cabin itself was mocking me. The shadowed figures in the corners seemed to lean closer, drawn toward me, watching, waiting. Then my reflection grinned wider, and I felt the weight of it. That grin wasn't just a mirror, it was a promise, a warning, a hunger. Something inside that cabin wanted me to step inside, wanted me to join whatever it was that moved behind the shadows. I bolted. My boots tore through the underbrush, branches slapping my arms and legs, but I didn't stop. My heart was hammering, my lungs burning, every nerve screaming. I dared to glance back only once, and the cabin was gone. Not a log, not a shadow, not even the faint outline of a door. Just empty clearing, moonlight glinting off pine needles, and the wind whispering as if nothing had ever been there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my tent, flashlight in hand, every snap of a twig making me jump. And when morning came, I packed fast and didn't look back. I told myself it was a trick of the mind, a hallucination, fatigue after a long hike. But every instinct screamed at me. It was real. I've returned to the Rockies since, many times. I know that clearing now can find it blindfolded. And every time I do, I scan the trees, waiting for the glint of logs, the dark holes of windows. I never go alone. Never. Because I've learned the forest can give you what you want, or it can show you what you shouldn't have seen. And the cabin, well, the cabin is patient. It waits. And when it decides, it will appear again. I've warned myself. I've warned friends. But no one listens. Some nights I lie awake thinking about that cracked mirror, that grin, and I wonder what it was waiting for. And then I tell myself, never camp alone. Never. Because whatever it was, whatever it is, it's still out there, somewhere in the Rockies, smiling, waiting, and patient. I've never been the same since. Story 2. I've backpacked alone before, but nothing prepared me for that night on the Appalachian Trail. I was at least 20 miles from the nearest town, deep in a narrow valley that the guidebooks called quiet, but didn't warn about otherwise. The sun dipped behind the ridges faster than I expected, leaving a pale purple shadow over the tree-line. I set up my tent near a creek, thinking the sound of flowing water would help me sleep. I was wrong. Around 11, as I was drifting off, I heard it, a soft, melodic whistling, faint at first, like someone practicing a tune on a summer afternoon. I blinked awake, telling myself it was the wind rustling through the pines. But the rhythm was too deliberate. It had pauses, small breaths in between, like someone was teasing a secret into the night. At first, I tried to ignore it. I lay on my sleeping pad, listening, telling myself it was a bird, or maybe a fox, though I knew foxes didn't whistle. But as the minutes crawled by, it got louder, moving around my tent. The notes stretched long and thin, curling through the trees, and something about the tune felt familiar. A lullaby, the kind my mother hummed when I was 5. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I knew I had never been this deep in the woods before. So how could this melody feel like home? I whispered, "Hello," and my voice sounded hollow, swallowed instantly by the darkness. The whistling paused, then almost teasingly answered back. The notes swirled around me, circling the tent. I swear I could hear soft steps on the leaf-strewn ground, light enough not to crack a branch, but there, a definite, deliberate movement. I grabbed my flashlight, swinging it through the black trees. Nothing. Nothing but trunks and leaves, stiff and unmoving. Yet the whistling stayed, persistent, patient. I tried to speak again. "Who's there?" The wind carried my words away, and in return, the whistling hummed a reply, slower now, mocking almost, as if it had been waiting for me to ask. My heart hammered. I wanted to pack up and leave quietly, but even thinking about leaving was terrifying. What if it followed me? I debated running, but that would make noise. I knew better than to give it the satisfaction. So I stayed still, breathing shallow, counting the rhythm of the whistling, feeling it tighten around me like a noose. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. It was impossible to tell. The forest was alive with whispers now, not wind, not rustling leaves, but soft murmurs in the shadows. Each whistle seemed to answer a different question I hadn't asked, each pause a breath that matched mine. I had never felt so alone. I wanted to call for help, but my voice wouldn't come. It was stuck behind a wall of fear. Then I noticed footprints, barely visible, but there, pressed into the damp soil near the edge of my camp. They didn't belong to me. Small, narrow, human-shaped but wrong. Too long, too thin. They led away from the creek into the valley's heart, disappearing where the shadows thickened. And I knew, with a sick certainty, that those were not the first set. They repeated, overlapping, as if someone or something had been walking in circles all night, waiting for me to notice. Panic set in. I packed my gear as quietly as possible, trying not to make a sound. But the whistling didn't stop. It followed me along the trail, answering every whispered prayer, every terrified breath. Step by step, I forced myself forward, heart hammering, sweat freezing cold on my skin. I dare not turn back. By the time dawn broke, the sun spilling pink and gold over the ridge, I finally allowed myself a glance behind. The valley was empty. Trees stood silent, leaves trembling slightly in a morning breeze. No one, no footprints, nothing but the faint impression of disturbed leaves and soil. I've hiked the Appalachian Trail many times since, in daylight, in groups, in silence, but I have never whistled in the woods again, not alone. And sometimes, when I hear a soft wind rustling through the pines, I swear I can hear a faint melody, echoing a lullaby I thought I'd forgotten, carrying on long after the trail has gone quiet. Because the whistling, it never really leaves. Story 3. I never thought I'd experience something that would make me question every quiet forest and dark night I'd ever known. But that night in northern Minnesota changed everything. My friend had jokingly called the area the Ghost Forest, and I laughed it off. I thought it was just a clever name, something to scare first-time campers. I wasn't a first-timer. I'd spent years camping, but that night, experience didn't matter. I arrived just as the sun was dipping behind the pines, painting everything in gold and orange. The forest was dense, almost suffocating in its stillness. I found a small clearing near a ridge, perfect for my tent. I set up, stacked firewood, and built a small fire. The night was crisp, the kind of cold that bites at your cheeks and turns your breath into mist. I sat there sipping water, telling myself how peaceful it all was. Around midnight, the forest went quiet. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. I crawled into my sleeping bag, zipped my tent, and thought I'd get a few hours of uninterrupted sleep. But by 2 a.m., I woke up with a strange feeling. My foot was cold, though I knew I hadn't kicked off the sleeping bag. Something was touching me. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs like a wild drum. I reached for my flashlight without thinking, the beam slicing through the darkness of the tent. That's when I saw it. A shadow, shifting beneath the tent, moving in a way that made my stomach twist. It wasn't crawling or running. It slithered. It looked almost human, but wrong. too long, too thin, like the shadows had taken shape just to torment me. I whispered, "Go away," more out of instinct than hope. The shadow paused. It pressed closer. I could feel a cold weight pressing against my legs through the thin fabric of the sleeping bag. My hand shook so violently I could barely hold my knife. I ripped the tent flap open, swinging the flashlight wildly. Nothing. The clearing was empty, quiet except for the crackle of my dying fire. I shone the light around, heart racing, and then I saw them, footprints. They led away from the tent into the forest, narrow, impossibly long, and clawed. Not human, not animal, something else entirely. I didn't wait. I packed everything in record time, my fingers numb, my mind screaming. I didn't look back as I hiked through the pitch-black forest. Every snap of a twig underfoot made me jump. I kept telling myself it was over, that I had escaped. But the forest felt alive in a way it hadn't before, like it was watching, waiting. When I finally reached the car, I didn't stop driving until the forest was miles behind me. But the memory of that shadow never left. Even weeks later, I couldn't sleep without checking under my bed, half expecting those long, clawed footprints to be pressed into my bedroom floor. Sometimes at night, I swear I feel that same cold weight brushing against my legs, whispering that it's still out there, waiting for me to return. And every time I hear a branch snap outside my window, I think, what if it followed me home? What if it's patient enough to wait until I let my guard down? I don't camp alone anymore. I don't venture into quiet forests. I don't even like to walk in the dark. And if you ever find yourself in northern Minnesota, in the deep, empty woods, listen closely. Because sometimes the shadows under the trees are not just shadows. And sometimes they're waiting for you. I still don't know what it was. I don't think I want to. But I know this. There are things in the forest that aren't meant to be seen. And if you see them, you may never be the same.